Am I the antagonist for telling my brother he can't stay with me unless he gets a job and contributes? My brother wants to stay with me for a bit rent-free while he works on some tech startups in college. None of his previous startups have done well, and I don't really mind that fact at all. I'd be open to him staying with me if he wasn't so condescending and rude. My brother has it in his head that he's allowed to be demeaning to everyone because he's got a high IQ and is a brutally honest, burnt-out gifted kid. He had this full justification from doing an online IQ test and scoring 140. He later confirmed his score with an actual professional test, which I think is a sad thing to do. In my family, we all did quite well academically and we're all quite smart. But my brother was far and away the brightest, but he hasn't really tried in college at all. He has it in his head that he's better than everyone and won't learn anything in college. He compares himself to other famous dropouts like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg. He can be disrespectful of people taking a more traditional route. I've never been talked down to for doing medicine other than him. He and my parents are livid at me because I'm not having him in my place unless he works a normal job. I don't even want him to pay. I think it'll teach him to be more humble and how hard it is out there. And not gonna lie, he truly is probably the brightest person I've ever met. But he's arrogant to near delusion and my parents enable it. Getting a job will definitely not hurt his chances succeeding himself. The discipline and perspective would help him massively. If this was just it, I wouldn't even consider the possibility of myself being in the wrong. But my parents did give me the deposit for my place and helped a bit at the start paying it off. And if I don't take him, they'll have to pay more rent somewhere else. However, they gave me that deposit without attaching these strings to it. It's my place, and I feel what I say goes even if I am grateful for their help. I feel conflicted because I don't want my parents paying even more in rent for him. But I also don't want to give my lazy and arrogant brother free housing with me. I'd be happy to live with him if he were contributing and didn't act with the arrogance of someone who's a temporarily embarrassed tech billionaire who's above working a normal job. So until I get that confirmation, I am not having him. Am I the asshole? Your brother's IQ is irrelevant to the real-world experiences and real-world problems he has to face. If he doesn't get a job and is unwilling to contribute, then he needs to find someplace else to stay. Am I the antagonist for reporting a local homeless woman who stole my food to the police? I am from South Asia and a few years ago moved to Australia for a master's degree. I completed my master's last year and have been working a full-time information technology job since then. Since I don't enjoy grocery shopping, I rely on meal services that provide weekly meals and groceries on one day of the week, allowing you to cook and eat them throughout the week. Usually I receive my box anywhere between 3-6 a.m. and I pick it up as soon as possible. However, this time there was a delay, and I got my delivery at around 8 a.m. I went to collect it at 8:15 before leaving for work at 9. When I went downstairs, my grocery box was missing. I asked the building reception, and they mentioned someone had taken it, but they didn't see who. The receptionist, who I knew, offered to show me the security camera footage. In the footage, we saw a lady from outside the building come in to use the lobby bathroom and then take the box while no one was looking. The receptionist advised me to contact the police to report the theft, so I did. While talking to the police, another receptionist returned and recognized the lady from the footage as a frequent visitor who used the washroom in the building. The receptionist told me she likely lived at a nearby homeless women's shelter and offered to accompany me to try to retrieve my box. We found the lady sitting outside the shelter, looking into the box and trying to see what was inside. When we confronted her, she claimed it was hers. We informed her we had contacted the police, and if she didn't return it, we would involve them further. She reacted angrily, throwing the box at us, causing it to open, spilling some items on the ground. She then yelled profanities and told us to leave. I gathered what remained of the box and returned to my building to complete the report with the police, providing them with the footage. A few days later, I learned that the police had located the woman, taken her to the station, and the shelter authorities had banned her from returning. Additionally, I received a refund for the stolen items from the food company. Upon sharing this incident with my Australian girlfriend and friends, they criticized me for reporting her, calling me an asshole. They didn't agree with my decision, but I felt it was justified. If you didn't, she might continue to steal your food, in addition to other deliveries. It's sad she's homeless, but that doesn't mean she has a right to the neighborhood's packages. This woman broke 2 of the cardinal rules of surviving while homeless. Don't shit where you eat, and don't bite the hand that feeds you. However, this is the receptionist's fault. I'd be making a complaint to building management about letting people in who don't live in the building. Hopefully she learned something, and hopefully this doesn't turn you hard-hearted toward the shelter or its clients writ large. Am I the antagonist for refusing to take money from my son to spend on my stepdaughter's medical care? I have a son who is 15 years old with my late wife, Cassie. Cassie passed away when our son was 5. She had received a large sum of money before her death due to medical negligence, which could have prevented her death. She used the money to clear her medical debts, pay for her funeral, and save the rest for our son. I have been saving since then, but not as significantly as the money already set aside by Cassie. I remarried when my son was 11. My current wife, Andy, has a daughter who is now 11 years old. Before getting married, Andy and I discussed finances, the kids, and how our blended family would work. We talked about savings for our children. My stepdaughter has very little savings because her father depleted it during his marriage to Andy and refused to contribute again. Andy was aware that my son had a significant amount in his savings. However, she does not have access to his savings, just as I do not have access to my stepdaughter's. We agreed to save individually for our biological child and not interfere with the other child's savings. We share expenses like medical and household costs, as well as extracurricular activities. Everything was going well until September. My stepdaughter has medical issues that require daily medication and occasional surgeries. In September, her surgery had complications and required additional treatment. Andy found a new doctor who identified further complications. This new treatment was costly, but we planned to pay it off gradually. Andy suggested using my son's savings to cover the medical expenses. I objected, stating that the money was meant for my son and no one else. She went ahead and asked my son without informing me. He declined, and Andy got upset with me. I told her she had crossed a boundary by asking my son for money. She believed it was necessary due to the medical issues her daughter was facing. The argument escalated, and my son and I moved out due to constant fighting. Andy made hurtful remarks about my son, which further strained our relationship. Andy's parents became involved and criticized me for not using the money I had access to reduce the medical bills. Andy accused me of neglecting my stepdaughter, despite our plans to pay for her treatment. I still feel angry about Andy asking my son for money against my wishes. Am I the antagonist in this situation? Your late wife's money was specifically set aside for your son, and your current wife has no right to try to access it for her own purposes. Her actions were not only disrespectful, but also manipulative and selfish. It might be time to reconsider the future of your relationship with someone who is willing to cross such a significant boundary for her own gain. Your son's well-being and future should come first. Am I the antagonist for refusing to share my inheritance with the rest of my family? I recently turned 18 and received a sizable inheritance worth around $700K from my paternal grandparents, being their only living descendant. This includes a 4-bedroom home in Boston, as well as a small 2-bedroom vacation house in California. Several years ago, my mom married my stepdad, who had 4 kids from his previous marriage, and they had an additional 2 children together. We also have my stepnephew living with us. My stepdad used to be a construction worker while my mom was a homeowner, and although they still worried about money, we lived in a decent house and had a regular working-class upbringing. That said, I didn't get along well with my stepfamily. My stepdad hated the fact that I wasn't related to him by blood, and he constantly ostracized me for being mixed race. I only got £2 allowance per week, even though I had to pay for public transport. I had to share a room, but he turned the sunroom into a bedroom specially for my younger sister. And he wouldn't allow me to try out for a scholarship for a private school, even though I could have easily passed because it would be unfair to my siblings. Around 2 years ago, my stepdad got arrested for something awful, and after all the financial problems that followed, including spending money on the new baby after he was born with birth defects, we ended up getting evicted. We had to move into a 2-bedroom council apartment, with me sharing the largest bedroom with the 2 eldest sisters and my nephew, my other siblings sharing the other bedroom, and my mom sleeping in the living room. My mom works 2 minimum wage jobs and made me get a second job too, even with my exams coming up, yet she's fine with my stepsister staying home all day after dropping out of school. We can afford necessities like food and heating, but we've had to cut back on basically everything else. After I got my inheritance, my mom begged me to use it to help out our family, and I refused. The thing is, my father and his parents were American, while the rest of my family are English and don't even have passports. So it's not like they can live in the property. I plan on using the money to pay for university, and afterwards travel the world and experience new cultures. I've always loved animals, and I want to follow my passions and open a cat cafe without having to worry about money. My family wants me to sell the property I inherited and buy a house in this country for them to live in, as well as another second house for my sister and her son. I promised I'd help them buy groceries and rent a better apartment, but it shouldn't be my responsibility to take care of them. It was my name in the will, not theirs. My stepsister is especially furious with me and says it's unfair that I get a fairy tale ending even though her life was harder than mine. Everyone thinks I'm wasting my money on my wants and ignoring their needs. Am I the asshole? Your mom and stepfamily have been using you for many years, and they just want to continue using you. I suggest you run away fast and enjoy your life. Your stepsister especially sounds atrocious, so leave her far behind. If you do decide to help them, you said you would help them with rent and buying groceries. Don't let it be an ongoing thing. If you do, you will be begged to help over and over again. Give them the deposit and maybe some rent money and or grocery money, and then call it quits and go live your life. Am I the antagonist for refusing to pay the difference in my kids' bank account? When my kids were born, I opened them a saving account, and both me and my mom put the same amount of money there monthly. My daughter had been working since she was 12. She did little jobs around the town until she was 14, and since then, she had an actual job. She didn't touch a penny from that money and put all of it in the saving account. So obviously she had more money than her twin. When my kids went to college, the same one but different degrees, we sent them money monthly that was enough for their basics and some extra. If they wanted anything else, then they needed to take it out of their bank account. They got access to it at 18, which is when we stopped putting money in it. My son did take some money out of his bank account. It wasn't much, but after 2 years of college where he took at least a little out every month, there is a noticeable difference between his and his twin accounts, especially since she got a part-time job and put about 50% of that money in the bank account and had the money she made before that. This weekend my kids were home from college. Their college is only 2 hours drive from us, so they're here most weekends. And we were at a family dinner at my mom's when my son heard my daughter talking with my brother about wanting to start investing, and he joked about how they have so much money anyway, so what, it doesn't matter now. But when we went back home, he asked my daughter to see her bank account. She was obviously confused but showed it to him anyway, and he got very mad. He was yelling so many nonsense that I still don't even know what he said, but at the end he told me that I need to put the difference in his account since it's not fair that she have more money than him. My daughter looked at him like he was dumb and said that she added money from her job and never took any out, and that's why she had more than him. He yelled that he didn't care and that they should have the same amount. I told him that I can't afford to pay the difference, especially as I'm paying for their college, and that if he wants more money then he should work for it. He went red in the face and stormed to his room. He hasn't talked to any of us yet, and my daughter has told me that he won't even look at her, and that even his friends had noticed that something is wrong with him and came to ask her about it. I don't know what to do. I don't want him to distance himself from us and his friends because of this, but I can't, and I'm not willing to pay the difference. His sister worked hard for that money, and it's not fair for her if he will just get it. You don't have the money to make up the difference, and even if you did, it would be so unfair to your daughter. Let your son pout and whine. He is getting to go to college and has a little extra spending money on top of that. He has no student debt, unlike so many people these days. He is so astoundingly ungrateful and entitled. Am I the antagonist for leaving my sister-in-law alone on the boat to go snorkeling while I was hosting? I, female 34, recently went on a snorkeling trip with my husband, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law's wife, and the kids, my sons, ages 7 and 3, plus brother-in-law and sister-in-law's son, age 8. When I was planning this trip, all of the communication from brother-in-law and sister-in-law was always like, "We are so excited to go," or "We are looking forward to it." So I was always under the impression that everyone was going to, get in the water and go snorkeling. Heck, sister-in-law and I were talking about what reef-safe sunscreen to buy before the trip. And then we get on the boat, and we're headed to the reef. Everyone's getting their snorkeling gear out, reapplying sunscreen, and I started to inflate my toddler's armbands. When sister-in-law saw me, she looked a bit confused and asked me whether my husband will be looking after both the boys in the water. I said my husband will go snorkeling with our 7-year-old while I get in the water and stay near the boat with our toddler. I'm 5 months pregnant, and I didn't want to stray too far from the boat with a toddler. The day was beautiful and visibility was amazing, but no way was I going to let my husband wrangle both kids by himself. This wasn't a beach. We were literally jumping into the sea from the boat. She told me she assumed I'd be staying on the boat because of my toddler and my pregnancy. I told her no, I can't really do that. Look, both of my kids love the ocean. If my toddler saw his dad and brother get in the water while he's stuck on the boat, believe me, we'd all be suffering. I asked her if there's a specific reason why she didn't want to get in the water, and she said she's not a good swimmer. She then asked me whether I'd be okay with my 7-year-old going with brother-in-law while my husband took our toddler. I said no because I wanted at least one adult per child. I told her she could put on a life jacket and join me in the water, but she said no. She then asked me to stay with her because she didn't want to be alone. She wasn't actually alone. The captain was on the boat, but I guess she didn't want to be alone with a stranger. I didn't stay on the boat. She only gave me one-word answers on the way back home, but I got a message a day before yesterday. She basically said that she was wrong to assume that I would stay on the boat, but she thought I would stay as a good host. I told her I'm sorry she felt that way. She called me an ass that can't even properly apologize. I promptly cut that off and let my husband deal with it. Sister-in-law has called me multiple times since, but I haven't answered. My brother-in-law is unhappy that I'm ignoring her and told my husband to make me talk to her. Her husband should have been the one to take care of her, not you. It's ridiculous that she expected you to babysit her and have the nerve to be annoyed with you. And the fact that she assumed you'd stay on the boat because of your pregnancy is just ridiculous. This is not your responsibility, and your husband needs to deal with them, not you. Not your circus, not your monkeys. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.